Yes, my name is Regina. I work in population and development.
Okay.
And I would like to point out that I think a key problem in any art in this country is the finding of Filipino identity. After over 100 years of independence, most of us still don't know what makes a Filipino, what makes our literature, our music, our design Filipino. And so I think, and since you did mention that there are a lot of young people who are bombarded with information from all over the world, from all sides. They don't know how to dial rotary. They don't know how to adjust an antenna on a TV. They also don't know things like how a traditional Filipino used to iron their clothes by putting coal in essentially what is a pot and sliding it across cloth. So a key problem, I think, is finding a balance between finding Filipino identity versus making Filipino identity and Filipino products global. So how do you suggest young people who want to go into design find that balance?
Feels like Miss Universe, wow. Well, I will, it sounds weird, but I'm going to quote what I said. I remember writing this article for Philippine Star last year. The word was, what is World Filipiniana? That was the title. What is World Filipiniana? And what I said was, this is Filipiniana, but it's not the Filipiniana we know of, because this is contemporary, modern, and current, and informed. And I think that might be the Filipiniana that the younger people will have access to right now. But if you're saying, how are they going to figure things out? How are they going to know? And I think the answer, again, links up to education and working with people who practice. Getting education people who practice. And when I say practice, it doesn't mean just design, but people who, there are so many ways of practicing design. One of them is, for example, archival, which is the jobs of museums, for example. Archival, saving memories. Another one is the job of communications, which is media. So what they probably could do is tap onto whatever we have right now that is about preserving memories, telling people about information, and projecting into the future, futurists. And then you might have a balanced version of what is Filipino design, and you know what, maybe importantly, what it can be. So that's the answer. So it's a very pregnant question. I think we can have a discussion over coffee one time.
Brian?
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have the mic. Yeah.
Someone is calling me.
Yeah, I think we discussed this over coffee already, but I just wanted to plug it in here that there have been a lot of things happening in the behind the scenes in government and private sector partnerships, where you spoke about branding the Philippines, and just to let people know that we are moving towards a branding council, where we are now actually this Sunday, the last discussion with the economic group before it goes to the president, for hopefully the signing of a EO to become a branding council, to be able to look at how we can consolidate the perception of what we are as a country outside to the world. And this was started, the advocacy was started by Ion, but we actually brought in all the different industry leaders. We've had the white papers there if you want to take a look at it. We're in the last phase now of bringing this white paper to the president for a branding council to be discussed. That's one. Second is that we've been working also, well, I've been working with the NGOs, a lot of the Philippine Business for Social Progress, the Peace and Equity Foundation, Pinoy Microenterprise. And the discussion has been towards bringing design into the local groups, especially the MSMEs and the SMEs. Like because of EcoStore going through all over the country, and thank you for what you've been doing, because we've been doing it also in EcoStore for the past year and a half. And really, it's design. That's a key, to bring our products to a different level. Just also to let people know that people in government know that this is lacking. And that is why in the next couple of, actually the next couple of weeks, there's a discussion on the strategy of putting design as a key towards pushing this as central to our development of our marketing, upvaluing products, to be able to make sure that whatever we present out there has a Philippine stamp, whatever might that be. So there is a concerted effort. And I think what you've started here at some point, and it'll be in the near future, will come together. And it's good that designers are hearing this. At some point, we all come together with clear programs to be able to bring together OTOP, to be able to bring together Design Center Philippines, how SciTemp can be a strong. And there is that strategy actually happening. So it's good that this is happening also from the outside. Thank you.
Immensely, thank you, Ms. Havelock. Tolosa. Immensely and extremely happy that you're doing all this. Thank you very much.
As a design professional who's also teaching, I understand what you said about the value of students learning from experience and through internships. But how do you feel the role of education would be in an ideal scenario where we have to balance the need to have standardization so that we can have a benchmark for quality, at the same time be able to encourage individual expression and growth?
Feels like Miss Universe again, Miss International this time. But really, I think I remember a discussion with a Korean group recently about that. And what they did was they had pegs and references. And I think when it comes to standardization, let's look at models on how they did it in other countries. I think a good model, and I'm not saying we transfer this, because like what I said a while ago, we should not just transfer things around, but a good model to follow would be the G-mark model of Japan, where they had this G-mark mark on products which they thought was fantastic and really good. So I think let's work with models, existing especially models that worked in other countries, similar to the Philippines, like Mexico, and then work it out from there. I would like to discuss more of that maybe on the blog, designfilipino.com. We can discuss more about it later too. It's a fairly long answer. And the last one, sir, yes. Gentleman in blue, Dr. Zialcita from Ateneo. Favorite school?
Actually, I wanted to answer that lady's question about heritage and identity. As Brian well knows, we have this program at the Cultural Heritage Studies program. I asked him to speak to one of my classes precisely on how traditional crafts can be reinvented to have a very modern global look. So he spoke about his shoes. Well, to solve this question about identity, what we do in the two courses I offer is we do comparisons, no? Because it's very hard to answer this question about identity without explicitly comparing. So we compare, for example, Philippine designs, whether furniture or churches or houses, with their counterparts abroad, like with Spain or Mexico or Indonesia. Then you can see clearly how different we are, how original. We also enter into a realm like taste, which I conduct with Jean Gonzalez, where we compare Philippine dishes with foreign dishes, and the students begin to realize that we haven't really been copying. We've been innovating. The other thing I point out is that identity is actually continuous. It did not stop. Our identity did not stop when Magellan came, nor did it stop when the Americans came. We continually create, we continually transform what we have imported. You can be both local and global at the same time. My favorite example, of course, are the designs of the Cebuano furniture makers like Kenneth Cobonpue. You can see the transparency of traditional Philippine textiles in his chairs. Very see-through quality.
Yes. I agree exactly, Dr. Zalcit. I know what you mean. And with regards to identity, maybe you can start a thread on that also eventually in the blogs when we do have designfilipino.com. Thank you very much. And like maybe you'll talk again in your class this semester. That might be the last, who am I looking at? That might be the last question. It's the last question, sweetheart. If it's a quick one, I'll answer it right now. Later na lang, okay. Now, go. Last. Yes. You can add me on Facebook, by the way, Brian Tenorio.
No, I have you in my Facebook already.
Oh, thank you.
No, my question is, you had an interesting quotation, which you said was an original quotation, but I wanted to follow up on it one time, which I never got to do, but I think this might be a good time to ask. You said that design in a developing country like the Philippines would be different because we would have less resources. Did you say something like that?
I think that I can take it on from here.
Yes, please. Thank you.
I think the quote, not verbatim, was designing from a developing country is different. With someone is calling me. Designing for a developing country is different because the perspective is different because we're not designing from excess. We are designing from a lack of. And I'm talking about material details because certainly developing countries have a lot of other things too. And that probably might include happiness, true love, and all these other things. But what I'm saying is, in terms of material wealth, yes, the context is different, the perspective is different because we're designing from need. I'm going to end with a small story. I was in New York the other year, and since no one cooks my dinner, I had to cook my own. So I figured I've never really cooked pork before, so I had pork, and I got like, red wine vinegar. I tried, I think, balsamic and red wine. I was mixing, I don't really cook. Balsamic red wine, and I sauteed it, and I added some spices. And my mom comes along and said, "Anak, anong niluluto mo?" I invented something new. I didn't know you can do this. What? Anong ginawa mo? I put kikuman, and I added red wine vinegar and balsamic. Anak, adobo yan. Ah, adobo ba? And I'm like, if you breathe in that air, you realize you're really Pinoy. If you breathe in air from the Philippines, you're really Pinoy. So thank you again to Mr. Jaime Zobel and the Zobel family and the Ayala Malls Group for their belief and support for Philippine design. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to Valerie Jacobs, Gavin Kaywood, and Jinwook Kim for their support, and to all my friends in design in Manila and the United States and other places for all the good vibes you sent over the last few weeks, especially in Facebook this morning. I want you to go outside and network and ask each other where I learned this word from Isabel Osa, where our convergences are, where your efforts overlap, so maybe you can work out on the same resources, share information, and head towards the same goal, which is the state of Philippine design. Thank you. Marami pong salamat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brian Tenorio, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Now we would like to invite everyone to partake in our cocktails outside Cinema 2. Thank you.